Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, fellow veterans, advocates, those folks out here who are concerned with Persian Gulf War veterans and their illnesses. My name is Jeffrey Ford. I am a Gulf War veteran, 100% disabled, honorably discharged in 1992. I was assigned to HHC 307th Engineer Battalion, 82nd Airborne Division during Desert Storm, Desert Shield, of which I was assigned to the Assault and Burial Platoon, and then attached to Alpha Company 307th Engineers, who were assigned to 1st to the 504 Infantry Division Airborne, 82nd Airborne, and Desert Storm. And we were the Hail Mary move out on the left flank, along with the 6th French Light Dragoons and 2nd Brigade of the 82nd Airborne, 2nd of the 505, I believe. I've testified before House Veterans Affairs Committee 3 times in 1997, several times before the Veterans Affairs Research Advisory Committee. I drafted the Undiagnosed Illnesses, or the Persian Gulf Veterans Health Act of 1998, that established the presumptive service connections for undiagnosed illnesses to do with Persian Gulf service. It also laid the groundwork for the formation of the VA Research Advisory Committee, as well as the War-Related Illnesses Research Center, or also known as RISC. So I do have some expertise in these areas. I'm not just tooting my own horn. I've been investigating this subject for 30 years now, and I'm not at all happy. In fact, I'm actually sickened by the state of affairs in the Gulf War veteran community right now. There is so much disinformation. I cannot, it was bad enough back in 95, 96, 97, all the conspiracy whacks talking about clouds of sarin drifting 500 miles and Scud missiles loaded with biological warfare agents that we sold them to make us sick, so the UN and the New World Order and the Russians and the black helicopters could come in and take over. This stuff was the fodder for early patriot movements back in the early and mid and late 90s, and how it's been propagated. That's what happens in a vacuum. Many of the advocates who early on were involved either got out or, like myself, just, made an impact and then moved aside. But what I'm seeing now circulating in social media is just a flat out disservice to American veterans and veterans from around the world that served in Desert Shield, Desert Storm, and their family members, and the amount of suffering and that has gone on. It's just, it's disheartening. It really is. And so this video, I've been wanting to do another video here of late to try to dispel some of this stuff that is just rampant. And there's a few podcasts that are just repackaging old videos and old testimonies and old conspiracy theory videos from 1995, as if it's just happening today. They're just playing on the fears, the suspicions, and the anger and illness of Gulf War veterans so they can get views. It's disgusting. It's disgusting. Shame on you people. So, with that said, and you know who you are. I've been on the show. They won't have me back for some reason, I guess because they want to continue to propagate nonsense. So today I'm gonna dispel a bit of nonsense that has been popularized quite a bit since day one, and try to do gingerly. The notion that the air war bombing campaign poisoned our troops. In other words, that the bombing campaign in Iraq in 1991 in January, specifically January, I believe, 18 and 19th, sent plumes of gas clouds into the atmosphere that then drove straight down to U.S. forces in Saudi Arabia that were preparing for the ground war. This is just not the case. And here's what I will do to try to dispel this rumor, myth. We'll start with Google Earth Pro. It's free. Anybody can look it up. There's come see it. All right. And up here is Samara. Let's put a pin on that one. Let's put a pin on Samara. Right there. So we're gonna mark out some of these weapons factories and storage facilities. So here's another one. It's in here. It's spelled Mohammedia. It's also known as Mohammedia. And another city that is well known. And I'm just kind of winging it here as far as mapping. I'll get out a better source map here shortly. Let's see. Let's go to the DoD site, Gulf Link, and then we'll look at environmental exposure from air campaign modeling. Well, that's not very expensive now, is it? So, let's see. What did they do? Not much. Air campaign modeling. I know they did a bunch more. Hang on. Air war bombing, 1991. So let's see. Let's just kind of do it like everybody else does it. Let's just Google it. All right. Al-Muthana and Mohammedia. So let's look at This is the newer GulfLink site. So let's look. Modeling. And I'm not going to go into all the details. So let's see. Weather models represent our best attempts to approximate actual atmospheric conditions. Well, so Iraq stopped reporting their weather conditions well before Desert Storm. So here they say right here, we simulate regional weather conditions using weather modeling. Dispersion models then work with the simulated weather to project the overall agent distribution in an area. So they are not using actual weather data. They're not using actual satellite data. Okay? So if you look at the methodology, typically they would want a common framework for investigations. So they turned to the UN, who had the most experience at the time. So from the UN, they get detailed written record of the conditions, the physical evidence at the site, the record of the chain of custody of the evidence, testimony, analysis, review by expert panels. Okay? Still, all right. A case usually starts with a possible chemical warfare agent incident. Investigators searches operational intelligence, environmental logs. Alarms alone are not certain evidence of chemical warfare agent presence, nor is a single observation sufficient to validate a chemical warfare agent's presence. Again, so the investigator searches the medical records for deaths, injuries, sicknesses near the incident time and location. Now I'm not stating any conclusions by the Department of Defense or the CIA. I'm just saying this is what the criteria is typically for any type of chemical weapon or any type of exposure investigation. So with that said, then their investigation, they use an assessment scale ranging from definitely not to definitely, with intermediate assessments of unlikely, intermediate, and likely. Now, this is just basically a bar scale that says, okay, this side, it definitely happened. This side, it definitely did not happen. And in between, unlikely, likely, and indeterminate. That's just basic. Same thing as in a court of law. Burden of proof. Okay? So, again, global weather models forecast atmospheric conditions over the globe. So they used the Global Data Assimilation System developed by NOAA, National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration's National Meteorological Center in Camp Springs, Maryland, the Naval Operational Global Atmospheric Prediction System, and a database developed by the European Center for Medium-Range Weather Forecasts. And as it says here, these sources collect and process weather observations differently, and they maintain historical archives that provide historical simulated global weather data for our analysis. Simulated. So, They did not use actual weather data. And what they do is, in this case, let's look at the DOD. Let's see. I take it back. They're citing the CIA published a report examining the release of the chemical warfare agents of Mohammedia, in which the CIA concluded the potential hazard from possible chemical releases did not reach U.S. forces. In subsequent analysis of this report, the CIA and other reviewers pointed out improvements that could make with weather and dispersion modeling. Again, and the amount of agent involved, agent purity, date and time of release. And in 1996, the Department of Defense requested the IDA, an Institute for Defense Analysis, to convene an independent panel of experts in meteorology, physics, chemistry, and related disciplines to review computer modeling related to Kalmasia investigation. Now they're mixing investigations anyway. So that IDA panel concerning Kalmasia investigation recommended, using some non-DOD models, and a combination of models to compensate for deficiencies in initial modeling. It was far worse than that, but we're not going to go into that particular event right now. We're still looking. But because of these suggestions, we agreed to reanalyze the release of agent from Mohammedia. Okay. So there was no question about the veracity of reports concerning Mohammedia, and I'll get to a map here pretty soon. All right. First off, this is the Mathana State Establishment, also called the State Enterprise for Pesticide Production, is sole chemical research, development, production, and filling organization. Okay? In a lot of these, what I'm just going to refer to as mythology of Gulf War illnesses, there's several people that just love to say that we sold Iraq chemical weapons. That's not true. There is absolutely no evidence that the United States provided Iraq with any chemical weapons either before, during, or after Operation Desert Shield, Desert Storm. With that said, the growth medium, the equipment, the precursors for chemical weapons is also the same equipment and the same chemicals, the same compounds that are used for agriculture and pesticide production. Iraq does grow a lot of wheat. They're fairly well known for growing a lot of wheat in Iraq. They do have, or did at the time, have a fairly sizable agricultural program going on in Iraq. We sold them dual-use technology. That's what the Riggle report says. That's what all the reports say. We did not sell Iraq chemical weapons. We sold them stuff to make agricultural products with. They used it to make chemical weapons. Did we know? Yeah, probably. Since he was using it to gas Iran during the 8-year war. Did we know that we would probably face some of those same chemical weapons? Yes. Did we provide him with chemical weapons? No. We did not. There's no evidence. Nobody can provide any evidence whatsoever that we sold him filled chemical munitions. It's just not true. It's conspiracy theory. There's people that can throw up a folder full of documents of all kinds of stuff, but they cannot sit here and cite anywhere that the United Nations inspection teams, or anybody else for that matter, knew that Iraq, that the United States had sold any chemical weapons to Iraq. It's just not true. So here is the map for Al-Mathana, Mohammedia, Fallujah, and Baghdad. So let's go back to our Google Earth Pro, and let's go find Mohammedia, which is Baghdad. There's Ramadi. Yeah, so that's where that place mark is. That's Mohammedia right there. And Al-Mathana is, let's find Fallujah, which is just west of Baghdad. Right there. And just north of there, so there's Samara. Al-Mathana. This is not my expertise, so normally I would be able to drop a pin right on the place. It's not really mapped. And it's probably been destroyed since then. I believe that's just it here. I will get. And it's really simple to find, okay? So, let's see. Al-Mathana. We just say, okay, I want grid ports is at 3388 and 4376. So then we just go back out here. It's real simple. Put it in the search bar, paste it, search. Yep, right there. That's how you find places. So we now have our 3 pins, our 4 pins. By the way, I have a bachelor's in physical environmental geography as well as a master's degree. It was paid for by the VA through Voc Rehab. I just completed it at a major university. It's not something that I sent off in the mail. So I do have some expertise in as far as physical and environmental geography and how it relates to the land, the atmosphere, and people. That's what I do. It's where I've been at a major university for the past 8 years. This is my expertise. Okay, so let's add a polygon here, because what we're going to do is really simple. We're going to find center mass. Or was the other one? Baghdad. Nah, let's not do that. Okay. So just for grins, I want to show you something here. There's Qamishiyya. All right. There's Kuwait. Let's put out some more pins while we're at it. So let's do Hafar al-Batin. Let's do all the way out to where we were at Rafah, which was where the 82nd, 18th Airborne Corps, the French, that's where they were. Let's Hafar al-Batin. Let's see. Let's go down here to Al-Jabal. So a lot of troops were stationed down there. Let's put another one here at KKMC, King Khalid Military City. And I believe King Fahad International Airport is I'll find it in a minute. So let's put another one at let's put another one at Tehran. Let's hear Dammam. There's the port. And another one at Tehran. It's just kind of a general area. Put it on the right there. That's kind of where Aramco was. So here's Ras Tanura. That's where Aramco was. The 80s. That's Al Jabal. And Riyadh, of course. Is way down here. Way down here. There's Riyadh. So, we got a pin on Riyadh. So, just for grins. And yes, look. See, the sand sweeps down from up here. Most of the sand in Saudi Arabia comes from Jordan. It comes from these mountains in Jordan that are eroding and what is called mass wasting, as well as here in Syria and northern Saudi Arabia. That's where most of the sand in Saudi Arabia comes from. And the prevailing winds blow it around. And if you've been there, that's what the dunes look like. Over hundreds and thousands of years. The winds don't always blow that direction. Those are just the prevailing winds. So let's get some measurements just off the bat. So let's go from the northernmost at Mithana. Wow. Okay. So let's go from Mount Mithana right here to Hafar al-Batin. 420 miles. See it right here? 420 miles. right, let's get another one. From there's 273 miles. Let's do some more. This is fun. And I'm not labeling all this stuff. Normally I do. But we're only going to be here for a little bit. That place mark was KKMC. All right. A lot of people at KKMC. Just for consideration, the closest facility to KKMC, 392 miles. All right. And just out of curiosity, Camisea. Different topic, but we'll go ahead and do it. Camisea to, let's just say Tapline Road right here. That's 130 miles. All right. Now I want to do something else here. Pretty neat trick with Google Earth Pro. I go over here to this menu and I right click on that last line that I drew from Camisea to Tapline Road, and I'm going to do an elevation profile. So I'm going to start down here at Camisea, which is only 14 feet above sea level. 14 feet above sea level. And if you look up there on that line, as I move the line down below, we're going uphill. We're going uphill. Right in here, we're already at 328 feet. By the time we get all the way to Tapline Road, where most of the troops are, we've gone over 1,000 feet up in elevation. Okay? If we do the same with these other lines, so this is the one from Fallujah. We do the same thing. We start there at Fallujah, 140 feet. It's in the Mesopotamian Valley. It goes up a little bit, and this is a long stretch. Okay, so it goes all the way up and then falls off. And by the way, no U.S. troops were up here. All right, so it goes all the way down to 30 feet right there near Najaf. There was nobody, no coalition forces this far north in Operation Desert Storm. Maybe some special forces is scud hunting, but that's about it. Not on the ground anyway. So from Najaf, we're at 30 feet. And there again, we're going to climb all the way up there to KKMC, 1,300 feet. Why is that important? Because it has to do with how the terrain affects weather. And weather, let's explain something real simple right off the bat. Weather and climate are not the same. Weather is what's happening outside your window right now, where you are. If you record that weather hourly, daily, monthly, yearly, over time, and then compare it to other weather reporting, hourly, daily, weekly, monthly, over time, in an area such as this, then you develop a climate pattern. In other words, what is the climate in Iraq, in this area, in this time of year? We're talking about January, mid-January. And were the conditions in mid-January in 1991 typical of recorded climatological data for this area over an extended period, say 20, 30, 40, 50 years? How did this relate? Was it normal? Well, that's easy to find out. So, climate, Central Iraq. What is it normally? Where's the best place to find that? Historical. We don't want to know what's going on right now. Climate profile. Sometimes you got to look around because they're politicized. So, a lot of it's about climate change. All right. What's the overview? It's the country profile. There we go. Observed climatology of temperature and precipitation from 1991 to 2020. Notice it's not saying weather. That's climate when you look at it over an extended period. So this is temperature and this is precipitation. Usually they're colored in red or blue for temperature and rain. And the monthly climatology of average minimum surface air temperature, average mean surface air temperature, and average maximum surface air temperature and precipitation. So we're going to look at January. So the average minimum surface air temperature in January in Iraq looks to be about 4 degrees centigrade. The average surface air temperature is looks like about 10. And the average maximum is about 16 centigrade. So, centigrade to Fahrenheit conversion. So, Celsius, we said it was, let's just take the average. The average was about 10. That's 50 degrees. So the cold was 46. So we're talking about average of 50 degrees. If you average daytime, nighttime in the month of January, it's about 50 degrees. And for those who were there, you could concur with me that that was about right. It's a Mediterranean climate with a real winter rainfall and hot, dry summers. In the north, there's high rainfall, cooler temperatures. That's up where the Kurds are. So, there is climate data for that time period. but not weather data. So let's look. Weather data, 1991, Iraq. Past weather. Well, looky here. Gulf Link. Gulf Link. Let's see. This is just a website. Yeah, it's just climatology. Baghdad International Airport. Unfortunately, I mean that does temperature, hourly temperature. Yeah, I doubt it. Well, let's see. Maybe we'll get something good out of it. Hourly temperature, and that's 1990. I want 1991. And I want January. Yep, see. 1991. Yeah. Well, it's just safe to say that, guess what? In January 1991, Baghdad International Airport was being blown to fucking smithereens. So, let's see if there's any cloud cover observations from 91. So every time I click on it, it just reverts back to 1990. So, and then if you go to 92, yeah, 91. Just not there. Well, because they weren't recording it. Yeah, there's so let's look at what we find in Defense Technical Information Center, I believe that's called. Here's 245 pages, a daily history of weather from 8 August 1990 to 31 March. So we want January 17th. All right, page 1. So, okay, so NOAA. Now here's what is important. So, what are they using? They're using NOAA, DMSP, and Meteosat, which would be Meteosat 4. NOAA and Meteosat 4, which NOAA is, I believe, NOAA 10, NOAA 11, and Meteosat 4. And these are polar orbit, geosynchronous. Well, they're not all the same. They orbit from the North Pole to the South Pole. And the reason that, and like in these instances, not all the coverage is planetary. So like Meteosat 4, you got to use the European African model. So, okay. So there's the area of interest. This theater of operations. So let's see what they say. So they're looking at Samarra, Ramadi, Karbala, Najaf, Nasiriyah. Now, I'm not real familiar with this. So, satellite imagery was invaluable. What I'm trying to do, okay, so the NOAA, Polar Orbiting Satellites, and European Space Agency's Geosynchronous Meteosat. So, and they said whenever possible, they use, I believe that's Defense Mapping Space. I have to look that up. Whenever possible, they try to use that and NOAA because of foreshortening problems with Meteosat images. Well, back in back when this report came out, that was a problem, but the software programs now are better equipped to extrapolate foreshortening problems without getting into a huge technical explanation. If the satellite is like at 3 o'clock in the afternoon sun location and it's looking to the east, then it has a far longer distance to look than it would if it was looking straight down. And when you have that much further distance to look, then you get a foreshortening. In other words, it's out of whack. But like I said, nowadays there's ways to alleviate that weren't around back when this report was written. So let's look at the general weather. Let's see. That's all through Desert Shield, Desert Storm, Desert Shield early. Significant offense. All right. Now, right here, I want to point this out. Yep. Dun, 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 dun. Weather satellites like the DMSP, and I want to get this technical explanation, Defense Meteorological Satellite Program, rely on infrared thermal sensors at night. The warmer lower altitude clouds blend into the background while the coldest, highest cloud tops are vividly depicted. In other words, they're designed to look at cold cloud tops. Remember, these are weather satellites. They're weather satellites. There are no satellites then or now in 1991 or in 2026 that look at hot gas plumes traveling across the ground. Why? Because that has nothing to do with weather and climate. That's what these satellites are up there doing. They're not looking for chemical warfare agent clouds traveling across the ground. That's not what they're built for. That's not what they sense. The infrared thermal sensors at night basically are looking for cold cloud tops. Cold cloud tops. Now, what does that look like? Okay, so let's go to So, desert storm weather. Areas of interest. Extensive early morning cloud cover over the entire area. Baghdad and the rest of Iraq, north of 30 degrees, was broken to overcast with ceilings 12 to 25,000 feet. Winds were from the south or from the southwest at 6 to 20 knots, becoming southeasterly. And keep this in mind. When in a weather forecast they say southeasterly, that means that's where the winds are coming from. So they would be coming from the south, going to the north, or from the southeast going to the northwest, or from the southwest going to the northeast. So winds were from the south or southwest at 620 knots, becoming southeasterly. In other words, blowing from the southeast to the northwest at 3 to 12 knots after sunset. That is away from Saudi Arabia. That is blowing from Baghdad up to Lebanon or Turkey or Israel, wherever, Jordan. It's not blowing towards the troops. High temperatures 13 to 22 centigrade and the lows 6 to 10. That's what we've found from our climate data. So, Meteosat IR infrared, 17 January at 2300 Zulu. There was a comma-shaped system that spreads cloudiness over the area. So let's get to, there's the NOAA. NOAA is visual. In other words, what you see is what you get. And it's looking at up subtropical jet stream and a frontal system. So, 19 January. High pressure centered in central Iraq and central Arabia. Subtropical jet stream. In other words, jet stream is way up there. All right? There's no chemical agents being transported in the jet stream, folks. It's just physically impossible to transport agent up into a jet stream. In fact, let's just look. How high is so I don't usually use this $30,000 to 40,000 feet. Okay? 33 to 43. And it's the same everywhere. Pretty much. Give or take a few thousand feet. 30 to 39,000. That is where airliners fly. Because they ride on the jet stream tailwinds. It saves them time and fuel right there. I would have to fathom a guess, and I'm going to just thinking out loud. I can't think of anything that happens down here on the ground that ends up at 30 to 39,000 feet. I'll say that again. There's nothing that happens down here on the ground, whether it's dust or explosions or whatever, that ends up at 30 to 39,000 feet. There's too much that happens below the jet stream. In fact, let's do a simple explanation of atmospheric layers. Okay, so where's a good diagram? Yeah, let's do a nice little drawing here. The exosphere. That's a little too much. Whoops. I guess we're stuck with it. Okay. Exosphere. That's right up there where the satellites are. Thermosphere. Mesosphere. That's where shooting stars burn up. Stratosphere. That's where the jet stream is. That's where airplanes fly. We're down here in the troposphere. How I ended up on Instagram, I don't know. Anyway, it's way up there, folks. Okay? All right. Now, let's see. Let's go to NOAA. NOAA 10, 11. Da, 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 da. No, 10 is da, 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 da. First, let's go to the European Space Agency. Meteosat 4 and 5, because that's where we're going to see satellites that cover that region in that time period. I've already logged in here. You have to have an account. So EU METSAT, that stands for European Space Agency Meteosat. And here is all the different satellites and sensors that are available today and in the past. Sentinel-3, Sentinel-6, those are more well known. Poseidon, there's NOAA, GOES, there's more NOAA, so actually we want, so I'm just showing you, okay, and now if you look back over here, this is what's important. Just because you see satellites over here, see February 26, 25, that's when they were put up there, 25. So they don't have data from before that time period. These are active satellites that are working right now. This is NOAA 21, okay? At the time of the Gulf War, we're talking about NOAA 10 and 11. METOP 24, cloud phase, all this stuff is from 24. So I'm going to clear all those, and I'm going to select and what I'm going to do is just, because I have a master's degree in this, I know what was available at that time. And like I said, MediaSat, so NOAA AVH RR was available. Sentinel 3, let's see, Media Hub, satellite sensors. Sorry, I had these cells selected and then it's easier if we just go by date. And this is kind of a pain in the butt. You gotta go as far as you can up. '98, '91, January. So we're getting right down to it now. January 18th through this is the stuff that I've just put right out there that people don't do. Okay, they don't go to this trouble. 19th, so we're going to say 20, we'll go up to the 21st. So clouds, start date, data. I hate this freaking interface. It's such a pain. Because it's only searching what it has active, and I have to go to the archives. And they're always hard to find. So here's MediaSat Generation 2. Since 2002. We want Generation 1, I guess. Retired. That's what I'm talking about. It's circular. I'm going to show you what these actually look like. And since I didn't pull up already the actual archive, I'm going to pull up. This is a NASA program called Panoply. It's actually free. You can use it once you figure out how to play around with it. I'm pulling up one from my Camisea research, which would be so this is 1991, March 5th. There's March 4th, 1700 hours. Let's open it. So what do we have in here? So this is 1700 hours. So this is on March 4th. So this has been 12, 14, 15, 16, 3 hours after the Camisea demolition. What you can look at using this satellite is cloud fractional cover. There's nothing else here. These are just bands that are time codes and longitude, latitude. It basically tells the program how to look. So we're going to select on cloud fractional cover, create a plot, and this is what it looks like. This is Kuwait right here. And the red area is cloud cover. And like I said, this is a file that I pulled out for Camisea. Now here's what's important. So if you look right here, this area, 1700 to 1800. In other words, these are only snapshotted once every hour. Okay? Once an hour. There is no real time. All right? Now, I can plot so there's 1700. I can do this. I can go back to the 3rd and I can go to the 5th. No, I can't. Well, I can. Let's see. Remove all. Open. Remote data set. No. Open. I'm going to, just for demonstration purpose, for the period of the Comacea demolition, 1,400 hours, 1,500 hours, 1,600, 1,700. Just a few hours right there. So we're going to create the original plot right there. And then we're going to, I forgot how I did this. File. Here's the data behind it. View, show the plot again, and then I'm going to change that because it's kind of counterintuitive, because it's cloud tops, not okay. I'll replot that. The blue is clouds. Now what I can do is, I believe, export. Yeah, okay. Frames. Time. I forget how I did this. But you can take those snapshots, and here's sorry folks, I did not have my ducks in a row for this. The point I'm trying to make is you can combine those to create a moving an MP4. In other words, a video. And I don't know where I kept them. I moved everything. But you can see the immense amount of freaking well, I can't find it right now. You can make a loop out of this. I just forgot how to do it right at the moment. One array only. Arrays. Array 2. So I need to add arrays. It's not what I wanted. All right. Create the plot. Combine the plot. Combine the plot. We're not getting anywhere here. Hang on. All right. Those files came from here. I'm not sure I'm doing a great job at trying to prove my point, which is this. These do not pick up or sense. Okay, here we go. Atmospheric composition. They're designed to pick up trace gases, CO2, nitrogen, ozone, aerosols, all those things that we're concerned with to do with climate. Monitoring aerosols, air quality, ozone, wildfires. Meteosat data can be used to monitor near real-time dust or wildfire events. That is today, not in 1991. You can't go back and find data that monitors dust, real-time dust, okay, in 1991, because you look, November 25. These are all new. So let's look at fire temperatures. In Africa. Fire relative power. Fires in Madagascar, they've been burning for a long time. These are typically places on Earth that people burn a lot. So you can get data off of this. These are... So we go to... And NOAA has this same... And this is off Copernicus, Sentinel-3. It's probably not going to load. Okay. Here we go. These are all current satellites, so not going to find anything here. Visualize products, sentinels. Yeah. Same thing with NOAA. You have to get into the archival stuff. So let's see. Satellites. So what could be done then? View real-time imagery. Okay. This is today. Earth in real time. 7-day global archive. Here's what happened in the last 7 days across the planet. So let's zoom into Saudi Arabia. Let's look in Iraq. What happened? Let's see. Let's see how far back we can go. It's just the last week. So let's go back and let's see if we can find visible real time satellites, imagery collections. Data collections. Also, a lot of these actually don't look at the land. Like these up here, they're looking at monthly aerosol optical thickness over global oceans. Climate data record. Let's see. Surface reflectance. Let's see what we got here. NOAA 7, 9, 11. Okay. So time period from 1981. All right. Now, let's shrink our bounding box. Down to Iraq. Let's see. All right. Platforms. Access. Download. Data set. Files. Direct download. See if we get lucky. 1991 for January 19th, 20, 21. Let's get 18, 17, 22, and 23. So, not sure where the coverage is going to land us, but we'll see. So this one is Noah 11, which is 1991, January 20th. So we want that one when it opens. We're going to look at 19th. And I'll show you exactly what is available in this file. So I'm going to pause these other ones real quick so that the one I want will load faster. Let's see how we're doing on time here. How long we've been going. Hour and 26. So what I'm basically trying to do is show what is available and what's not. All right, so we've got 19. All right, I got to cut this off.